What's up, everyone? Good morning, 511 land. Glad to be here with you this morning. And we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We got our co-host, Jarrett Branch, is in jury duty. So things are going a little bit unexpectedly, but it's all good. And we're here today joined by Grace Glass, who's running for 8th District Representative in the Tallahassee area of Florida, Panhandle area. So, Grace, we got you here. We're excited to have you here, and I know you came through the came up through Blexit ranks, and you're, I believe, regional manager over there for, was it the Northeast region?
That's correct, Mike. Very correct. Yep. Started off as first chapter, Florida chapter leader. That was very well. And over the months, over the years, went up to become the Northeast Regional Director for Blexit. Yeah. And funnily enough, how that started, of course, in 2016, my pastor, who's Nigerian, his name is Teacher, he asked me a question in 2016. He said, Grace, who are you voting for in the 2016 presidential election? And then I said, Hillary. He says, really? Why? He said, is it because she's a woman? I said, yes. And he said, Grace, no. He says, no. He said, go back and do a thorough comparison between Hillary and Trump. Look at their values, look at their platforms, their party affiliation, vote a bit more informed. And I went, and that completely changed my outlook on politics. And I got a little bit vocal about it on just X, maybe like a post or two. And then someone at the time who was a leader in Blexit saw that particular tweet, and then she took a screenshot of it, put it on her page, and they sent me an email or a message or something they sent me, and then the rest had been history from there. So it was just funny how Blexit came to be a really big part of my life.
So you voted in that election against what they tell you you're supposed to vote, because they say if you're black, you got to vote a certain way, right?
Yep. Always. And even in that particular city at the time, there were posters everywhere of Obama and Hillary hugging and all the kind of, love and everything, all this unity appearing.
They didn't show the back with a knife.
I'm telling you, they had that going on. Like, something's going on, because they're not coming to the doors to inform you or to talk to you about their values and what's at stake, or even the other side of the story. But it's just come out, vote for this particular person, this party. But my pastor from Nigeria, which is a third world country right now, a lot of African countries watch American politics much more closely than even most Americans do. Yeah. So when he posed that challenging question, it was timely, and it was the first that someone had, challenged me on who I was voting for, and the rest was history for that. But yeah, I completely went against the grain. And that particular year, Mike, 2016, I was a single issue voter. I seen that there was pro-life on the ballot, and there was someone, of course, who was supporting abortions. And I said, hey, for me, it's easy. I'm going with the person who's pro-life, and that was it. But that opened up the rabbit hole for me to go through for the rest of the years.
But aren't most voters actually single issue voters? Because if they're even single issue voters, a lot of them just vote along identity politics lines, right? Or partisan, whoever they're told to vote for. And most people don't pay attention. And you mentioned that in other countries, they pay a lot more attention to American politics than most Americans do. And I don't think that that's just in African countries. I think that's around the globe. We had somebody from Australia, a friend of mine, Pat Massetti, on a few weeks ago. And he mentioned how, in Australia, they pay a lot of attention to American politics too, because and what he said, and I think you can kind of give your take on this, but for the world to be safe needs a strong America.
100%. We are the leaders of the free world. We set the example. And a lot of that structure was established from our founding fathers, which came from the word of God that they use. So America is, they call it the exception. We have set standard for years, and we're continuing to set a standard. So what happens in America, usually we see happening 5 years, 10 years later in various countries around the world. But we set that precedent here in the country. So if America doesn't have a strong leader of the free world, it's beginning to there's going to be a decline in other economies, other nations as well. We have China already wanting to be is a superpower, wanting to outpower and dominate America in every area of society, our education, our military, the economy. They're wanting to arise and dominate. So if we don't hold our ranks and hold our position on the global stage, not just we're doomed as a nation, but our allies will also be doomed. And that just sets a whole nother set of events in history that we don't want to really see for our nation and for the world.
But China is surpassing America in some areas, and it's not good for the rest of the world. China, with their policies and their the communism that they're wanting to spread globally, the big thing about China is they think on a much longer horizon and timeline than we do here in America. At the most, we're thinking 4 years out. They're thinking 400 years out.
Yeah. That's true, Mike. That's very true. It's very true.
So as we're getting into today's show, and we're going to talk some more about Grace, give all of you guys a chance to get to know Grace a little bit. Some of you guys hopefully know her already a little bit. Those of you who don't, we're gonna talk about where she stands on some issues. But before we do, want to mention one of our sponsors, Covenant Coffee, covenantcoffee.org. You can go check them out over there online, covenantcoffee.org. Or if you're in Bakersfield, you can go check them out at Mohawk, California, or on North Chester. We love what these guys are doing for the community, for the emancipated foster youth of the community, keeping them from being another statistic, and just really making a point to be a support system for those emancipated foster youth. They started by helping foster youth, and as the foster youth aged out, they started seeing them become statistics, just another statistic of human trafficking, drug abuse, overdose, homelessness, and so many other things. So covenantcoffee.org is doing what they can to fight back against that. And also wanted to let you know about two events we have coming up. Grace, I don't know if you're going to be at the second one, but I bet you'll be at the first one. The first one we have to announce, big event in December over in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know if we have a video for that. If we don't, that's okay. But it's amfest.com. Are you going to be there, Grace?
I will be there. I was here last year. It was amazing. So most likely I'll be there again in 2024.
Oh yeah, there's going to be something like 20,000 people there. Hopefully celebrating victory for not just Donald Trump, but for conservative values and for Christian values across the country.
Yes, we have a lot at stake. A lot is at stake in this coming election, and that's why more than anything right now, every Christian, whether you had a life of prayer or not, it is time to pray for our nation like never before, because we are really at a battle for the soul of our nation. We say it every year. This is the most important election of the year. It's the most historical election of the year, but this 2024 election is truly the election of the year. And also in this year, 2024, this is the greatest time to vote, one. And then on the global scale, this 2024, several nations, I want to think at least 64% of the world is out voting this particular year alone. And we need everyone to come out, of course, and vote. But there's so many elections happening. Some already took place in the beginning of the year and more to come. But just globally, it was written in the Times Magazine, globally, 2024 is the global election year. They call it the election year. And that's probably why I really truly believe he did. The Lord let me in to run this particular election year. Because I told you back before, I didn't start my goals off 2024 wanting to run for office. It was a really burden upon my heart, yes, that something needed to be done in the political realm that I needed to do. And I just went to the Lord, and I just prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, if this is really you calling me into politics, not just commenting or being a part of someone else's campaign, if you want me to run my own, Lord, just show me the office you want me to run for. Just direct me. And with some prayer, he did. And I've been seeing him all along the way. But my prayer to him was very specific. I said, Lord, if it's you, because people were telling me different things, but I said, Lord, if it's you who want me to enter into the 2024 election cycle, show me the office, open the doors, bring the people, bring the funding, show me everything I need. And he did. He did. So this year is a serious prophetic year for election. So Christians around the world, pray like you've never prayed before for our nation and for its leaders, and that God will be done. His perfect will be done in our nation.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And Darius, I don't know. It looks like you might have had that video up. So if we do, can you go ahead and roll it? And I'm going to take it that you're not responding, so that we don't. Oh, there we go. Okay, we got it.
What you represent, your presence here, at the largest multi-day event in conservative grassroots history.
Because it brings everybody
One of
together.
my favorite of the
The
year.
energy, let us want you to see it.
The stakes are high. We have only begun to fight.
Phenomenal.
So I think they're ending the early bird registration this week. So if you guys are out there and you want to go to AmFest, right now is the time to get your tickets, because they're the cheapest they're ever going to be. I know that it's a pretty big discount, especially for VIP, which, I think those tickets can be pretty expensive. But right now I think they're 50% off. So go check them out. The event's going to be December 9th through the 11th in Phoenix, Arizona. Guys, we'll be there. All of 511 will be there. Grace, you'll be there. We'll see y'all there. So yeah, we were talking about your running for office and why you're running for office and how important the election is. And Grace, you mentioned that this election cycle, everyone says, oh, it's the most important election cycle of your lifetime. And we say that every election cycle. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I think that it's also true every election cycle. The further we go, the further politics, shifts to the left, especially in the past, decade plus. The more important it becomes, because we're right on the verge of losing our freedoms, and if we don't fight for the freedoms that we treasure, for the freedoms we hold dear, as Ronald Reagan says, and I'll paraphrase, as Ronald Reagan said, and I'll paraphrase. We're never more than one generation away from losing our freedoms, and we're right there, guys. So we have to not just get out and vote. We want to get out and vote. Make sure that we're bringing other people with us to the polls. Make sure that we're getting involved in whatever area we can, whether that's being a poll watcher, poll worker, just bringing other people to the polls, making sure that people around you, your friends, your family, are informed. Whatever it is, whatever you can do. Grace, what do you suggest people do to make a difference in this election cycle?
3 things to make a difference in this particular election cycle. Know the truth, love the truth, defend the truth.
Look at you. You're ready for an answer there, too.
I am. Because if we know the truth, if we know the truth about our Constitution, our foundation as Americans, what we thrive on, what our fabric of who we are as a nation, you go to love it, because we're unique and incomparable to any other nation. Very unique. Other nations don't have the freedoms that we have, not to this degree of our expression of our faith, ability to speak, capitalism, like the freedoms that we have and enjoy. Like you said, they're on the brink of being lost. So if you love those things, I can make my own business. You can just wake up overnight, go online, 20 minutes, have your own business. Other nations, they're full of regulations. You can't just easily create a business or open up a church in Nigeria. Oh, no. No. There's so much red tape in many different nations, so much red tape. In America, you got an idea, write out your vision, your mission statement, your core values, go online, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, stops, you're done. So know the truth about your country and what you can do, your freedoms, love the truth, and defend it. Again, like I just said, not just going to the polls to vote, but in any area where you are, whether it's in education, whether you are big in the economy, whether you are big maybe nutrition or law enforcement, and whatever area that you're called to, or like 511 media, they're full of knowledge. They're here, channels everywhere on the internet, and they're blasting the truth, having guests who blast the truth. You defend the truth. The protesting, we have opportunities to protest, defend the truth. And again, that's countering every other lie. That's countering every other myth contrary to the truth of who America is as a nation. So those are those two things. Yeah. Know the truth, love it. And defend it.
There is a Bible verse, Grace, that sounds very similar to what you just said. What is I'm trying to remember it exactly. Guys, I'm not a pastor. I never claimed to be. am a man of God, a man of faith, but I know there's people that know the Bible much more than me. But I believe it's along the lines of take every thought captive that stands contrary to the
obedience of Christ. Yes.
There you go. There you
Yes.
go. I knew between the two of us we'd get there, Grace.
Absolutely. And we have to take everything, every imagination, every thought captive. If it isn't aligned with the arrival of Jesus Christ, his arrival, his life, his crucifixion, his death, his burial, his resurrection, his ascension, his return, if it doesn't align with any part of the life of Jesus Christ, discard it. Discard it. Discard it.
Well, and when it comes to our elections, especially this year, of all the years, I think there's a very stark contrast. Thank you, Ludavia. 2 Corinthians 10:5. If we can get the full passage of that verse, that'd be amazing. But especially this election year, I think it's very stark contrast between what is frankly just good and evil. It's not red and blue. It's not left and right. It's not Democrat, Republican. It's flat out just good and evil. And so when we talk about the what's going on in our world, we can't. There we go. Let's go ahead and bring that up on the screen, Darius. You can throw it into the banners, I believe. But when you talk about what's going on in the world and the politics and the politicians, and I think it's very evident who stands for what, and you got one party that stands for death. One party that stands for destruction of our values, and one party that you can hate the man, but you can't deny the track record and the way the values have been upheld. So, are we going to continue to support values that we don't believe in? Are we going to continue to promote death and frankly destruction, or are we going to push back and go against the grain, go against what they're telling us to do? The gaslighting that says, the least liked politician in history, now everybody loves her. It's not about the person. It's about what they stand for. So, Grace, I'll let you comment on that.
No, and that's very true, Mike. And that was the message I have to convey, even at voters on the doors now when I'm running for office. They see Republican and they're like, oh no, I can't vote for Republican, I'm Democrat. I said, well, you actually can vote for a Republican if you're Democrat. Either you're thinking about a particular law or restriction, or it's just you telling yourself that you can vote for a Republican because you're Democrat. So I tell them, I said, don't look at my party affiliation. My loyalty overall is to God. When it comes to the party here in America, my alignment is more so with the Republican Party. So I would tell her, like it happened Saturday, I would just tell her, look at the policies I'm planning to implement for this particular area in Florida. Focus on that. Do not let the R scare you away. Okay, that R, don't let it scare you away. I know you had some encounters, or you're thinking about white supremacy, all the fears of the R. So that just changes when you tell them, like, look at the policies, more so than the party affiliation. And then another thing that changes voters from just sticking to party line voting is when they interact with the candidates or the leaders of organizations. If they can have that encounter to see, okay, this person is genuine, they have an actual agenda, they know what to do, they're relatable, they have the right hearts in the right places, that changes the narrative of their patterns of thinking on how they're going to vote in the ballot box. Also, and so I want to share, Mike, you mentioned about just this particular election is good versus evil. And that takes me back to the word of God when it says there comes a time where people will believe that evil is good and good is evil.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that line of good and evil is blurred and very clear is if you know the truth, if you know the word of God, if you know it. Some may say, well, how can I read the Bible the whole time? It's possible to do. I've seen people read the Bible in 1 month. If you want to dive deep, I know they say much about the 1 year plan. That's fine. That's fine. And it's doable. But I know many people who have completed the Bible from Genesis to Revelations in 1 month. It's a sacrifice. It's a real level of consecration that's not really commonly even talked about, but it's possible. But to really define what is evil and what is good is to use what the Lord says and what he calls good and evil. And we see that is at a blur in this nation and just around the world in general right now.
Yeah. Well, and Grace, I don't think they need to read the entire Bible to get the idea either. I think you can sum that up in just a couple books of the Bible, and really at the end of the day, like you go back to Old Testament scripture, and they have the 10 Commandments, right? You can go through and see which party aligns with the 10 Commandments, but let's take that forward to the New Testament scripture, because people are like, well, that's Old Testament. Are we still under that? Right. First of all, Jesus said that I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill the law, right?
Correct.
He didn't do away with the rules. Yeah, there's some Levitical things and Leviticus and stuff like that applied to a certain group of people at a certain time, so on and so forth. But the 10 Commandments was for everyone.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So you look at the New Testament, and Jesus summed it up in basically 2 sentences. He said, love your neighbor as yourself, and love your Lord God with all your heart, right?
Okay.
And that sums up the entire thing. And if you just get a hold of God and spend the same or even half the time just in prayer that you would reading the entire Bible, I think your answer would become pretty evident. And if you take a moment and look at, hey, what policies, right? And so we get to not every election, all politics are local. Yeah. And that's where you're running, Grace, is at the local level.
Local, yeah.
So you're running for the 8th district in Florida,
yes,
House Representative. And what got you here?
What got me here was just seeing the condition of this particular city. Tallahassee is where I live. I was taking the bus to work, taking Ubers to work, and then eventually I went evangelizing on a Saturday last year. And as I'm walking down the street, Appalachian Parkway, I see all of the people that I'm encountering are legit drug addicts. You can tell it in their skin. You can look at their eyes. Now, the reason I was able to identify that as drugs they were actually addicted to was because both of my parents both my parents were drug addicts, both of them, father and mother. Okay, so my mom has been clean for 20 plus years. My father passed away when I was 16, but not because of drugs. He had been very clean, well-educated, businessman, successful before he passed away. But I know those indications when I see them, and I see it was just so common with every single person I met. And then, of course, just hearing some of the city councils, hearing the complaints of the people here, I said, something has to be done, okay? Something must change in this area. So when I begin to look at District 8, and I begin to notice, one, they have been under Democratic rule for 60 years, 6 decades nearly. And then 2, there's no major employers in Gaston County. That's a whole county, small. It's made up of about 45,000 people, but it's a whole county, not one major employer. Leon County, we have the hospital, Tallahassee Memorial, we have the state jobs, and we have now Amazon, which is recently new. That's 3 major employers here. Gaston County residents literally leave their county, have to come to Tallahassee. The distance isn't far, but the fact that you have to leave, you have to drive anywhere from 45 minutes to get to a job in Tallahassee, is pointless. And the state has given this particular area, District 8, a little under $100 million this particular year alone, and there's nothing to show for it. I go online to try to see where has the money been allocated for different projects it was meant to go to, and there's nothing to track the progress of these assignments, these projects. So I said, okay, something is really up. I don't know all that's happening here. I know there's some good leaders here as well, but there's also a lot of corruption taking place that isn't being addressed, and the people aren't being fully represented in the Florida legislature. I think if the state knew what was happening, if the state knew how the poverty rate is double that of the entire state of Florida, like just District 8 alone, just Gaston County alone, their poverty rate is double that of Florida. I believe that the state would intervene in a very, very critical way. If they understood that the median income is so much lower than any other median income in any other county in Florida, they would intervene. So the money is here. We have a great governor giving us the funding, but the money isn't being allocated to projects to make a difference.
Where's the money going?
I can't even tell you, Mike. I know we renamed Tallahassee State College to Tallahassee State College now. It used to be Tallahassee Community College. Now it's been renamed to Tallahassee State College. That's a renaming of the school. That's nothing of really substance, but thank God it changed. It makes a difference to some degree, and it will in the future to come. But there was some funding that went to a renovation for a Boys and Girls Club. But anything in regards to entrepreneurship opportunities, classes for maybe young parents, or even funding for new entry like re-entry programs, because we have a lot of those here, or the shelters and some of the food pantries. Money isn't going there. There's a list of projects, but you don't see the money actually really flowing there. When I go to look up the statistics for Gaston County to find out where the money's going, the only data available is from 2022. This is 2024, and we're nearing the ending of 2024, and there's nothing to show for it. So like something's going on here. Something's going on here. And then go ahead.
Oh, so you said the state doesn't know about this that's going on at the state level.
I don't think so.
So how, why don't they know, and how can someone make sure they do know?
It's a matter of voting for a leader like myself, conservative Republican, coming to represent this district in the Florida House, because the Florida House representatives, you are to bring the issues of your district to the Florida House. You are to bring proposed bills, co-sponsored bills, tell the Florida legislator what's happening in your district. That's every responsibility of every state legislator in Florida, and every other state in just the country. You are meant to represent the people. So the House only knows what you tell them. They may receive emails. The executive office of the governors of those states may receive emails. They may hear complaints, but it's ultimately the state representative who represents the people in the House of any state. So if I am a leader and I'm not really voicing the true concerns of the people in that particular legislator, the problems aren't being solved. If I'm a leader, I'm not talking about the poverty rate. I'm not talking about the high school dropout rate. I'm not talking about bringing more businesses or developers to our area. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So again,
why aren't they? Why aren't they doing that now?
Why aren't they doing that in this particular area? I just don't know. It isn't their priority. It isn't their priority. And this is the pattern of many Democratic-ran cities across the country. The priority is give them just enough, and has always been since Lyndon B. Johnson, give them just enough to keep them at bay. Give them just enough to keep them at bay. Ensure there's food stamps, ensure there's government assistance, but to get them on their feet, to open up an avenue of entrepreneurship, we're not going to do that. To invite investors and development here, we're not going to do that. To bring more housing here, we're not going to do that. Anything that would actually alleviate, completely destroy poverty, their mindset isn't to do that, because not all Democrats, but majority of the Democratic agenda in this current day generation of leaders from the Democratic Party, they want you to be bound to the government. They want you to rely on them. The moment that you begin to think for yourself and you're given tools to do for yourself, you are completely free from the Democratic Party. You're thinking for yourself, reason out for yourself, have your own money, you have your own principles, you're applying yourself to every area, you completely don't need the platform, that Democratic rule for anything. And I just think I think it's a way to keep power in this jurisdiction. If you keep the people depending on you, you are always at a grip for power. And that could be one of the things here.
And that's kind of really, I think, a great way to summarize the mission of Blexit, the organization you and I both are a part of and support strongly. And you know, that's something our brother Pierre has done a great job starting, growing, building, expanding, and you know, I real quick, I want to mention an event that they have coming up that we're going to be at that is in Philly. I don't know if you're going to be there, Grace. I'm sure you'll be at the Tampa event. Go ahead and bring it up, Darius. The Night of Faith in Philly. It's going to be actually next weekend, Saturday, September 14th from 5 to 7. And going to be a ton of amazing speakers. I'm going to be there. Our co-host Jarrett Branch is going to be there. And we're gonna see you guys there. It's a great. Have you been to one of these Nights of Faith,
I have
Grace?
not been to a Night of Faith, and I know I'm missing out. I think once the campaign concludes here, I have to make sure that I attend a Blexit Night of Faith because I see them all.
You know,
over.
there's one in I think November in Tampa.
That one I could do. That one I could do.
That one's drivable for you, ain't it?
Yeah. Oh, much so. Big time. Absolutely. But Philly, that's a bit far away.
But guys, go check it out. September 14th. We're going to be there, and it's a free event. So I think you guys are going to get a lot out of it. Lorenzo Sewell will be speaking along with several other amazing speakers. Jared and I will both be there. Make sure you stop by our booth and say hi. And we'll see you there. So this is Grace, the organization you kind of. And correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of got really started your political career to some extent, right?
Yeah, I would say in a sense, they played a big part of it. My first big political opening was at an internship I did for the congressman in Brevard County, Congressman Bill Posey. But with Blexit, Blexit had satisfied a lot of questions I had in my heart for a long time just growing up. So when I found out that there was a group of people who thought like me, who reasoned like me, who believed like me, and they were also Christians, it was jackpot for me. It was completely jackpot. I had no idea that they existed. But it really was. It really was. And Pierre has been a phenomenal, not just a phenomenal leader for the agenda to liberate Black Americans, but he has been a prominent example. His family, oh my goodness, that man, he knows how to lead a family and, of course, an organization. And I thank God for his life. I thank God for Pierre Wilson's life. He pioneered that vision for Blexit on his own, with, of course, the help of the Lord, but sacrificing to a degree I haven't seen, and that isn't really even common across this nation. Often, sometimes, more so for Black Americans who are conservatives. But he put a lot on the line to birth the agenda of Blexit. So I'm forever grateful for Pierre Wilson.
So Grace, how many, what percentage would you say of Black Americans are conservative and don't realize it?
In America?
Yeah. Because how many Blexit people do you and I both know that they started out, I vote Democrat because, Joe said if I don't vote Democrat, I ain't Black.
Ain't Black.
Right. But then you get to talking to them, and I've learned along the way, I don't ask them when did you become conservative. I ask when did you learn that you already were conservative, because many of them already were, right?
Mm-hmm. I would say anywhere between 75 to 80% are conservatives, so they just don't know it. If they sit and think about some of the values that you ride on, they're in the depth of you, pro-life, entrepreneurship, positive history. And people will even tell you that some of the, just for an example, some of the music, the music industry, some of them will listen to it, but they'll tell you, I don't even allow my kids to listen to this. I don't allow my kids to hear this kind of lyrics in this music. Why? Because it's degrading. It isn't positive. So they want positive history. positive history inspires you to do something great in life. So most of them, they are in alignment with conservative values and don't even really know it yet. Don't even know it yet. And
Yeah,
I think
and
the part, one of the, excuse me, Mike, one of the parts where they kind of stick with this notion that they aren't Republican or that they aren't conservative is because it isn't visible. It isn't expressed everywhere in their environment. But you tend to conform to your environment unless you're, someone who has extremely strong willed on your own. You tend to conform to your environment until you see, oh, there's another set of people who think like me, who operate and who believe like me. Oh, I'll go with them. They align with my faith more than anything, and you go with them. But most times they conform to their environment and just kind of stick with, I'm not conservative or white supremacist and all those other shenanigans.
yeah, and isn't that crazy that they tell you that the Republicans is the party of white supremacy, and you look back in history, and the entire time the liberal politicians and the mainstream media is gaslighting the American people of what the truth is, saying, "Oh, well, they switched sides. And they never switched sides. They just switched methods. That's all they did."
That's it. That big switch. I would say it was a tiny switch, not even a full 2% of the switch. And if they just simply look at history, Abraham Lincoln, Republican president, abolished slavery. Okay. It was Republicans who were pushing for blacks to vote, not Democrats. It's Republicans even today. So yelling for universal school choice. It's all the values of freedom in every aspect of the economy, education, richer family. It's all pushed by Republicans, and it's just basic knowledge that is being just kind of passed over their heads. And if they really look at it, and even the day when Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated as president, on the actual day of his inauguration, he sent 8 U.S. Navy ships to the coast of Africa, telling them stop packing up slaves and bring them to America. We don't do that slavery stuff here. Okay, it was 1807 that we, as a country, signed the first law saying we're against the slave trade. Great Britain abolished slavery in 1833, but we signed the first piece of legislation saying we're not with the slavery, we're not with the slave thing. It wasn't completely banned until 1865, I believe it was, but we were the first ones to do that. But if they just look at simple facts of history, and it's easier to look up now because we have AI. So any question that comes to mind, you can just AI it or chat GPT it, check it out, do the research. But yeah, Republicans have always been pioneering the way. And I think if people just get past Republicans and Democrats and just look at policies, look at like China, you mentioned. China doesn't look at the agenda for 4 years, 6 years, 10 years. They look 20, 40, 100, 400. Yeah. Longevity. We're like Americans. There's Africans, I say Nigerians, they call us Americans the microwave people. We want things done right now.
Yeah.
And it's seen.
Well, look, I think it's impressive how knowledgeable you are about history. And I love seeing that. And, I think it's crazy because the party that tells you that the Republicans are racist are the same ones that tell you that almost all black people are criminals, drug addicts, and too dumb to figure out how to get ID.
Mm-hmm.
I have, Grace, I think probably at this point, I probably have more black friends than I do white friends. And I don't know a single one of them that can't figure out how to get their ID, let alone doesn't already have it.
It's such an insult, Mike, and it's such an insult. You need an ID to do absolutely everything. To go to school, to drive, you need an ID. Even to die, you need an ID. What happens when you die? Okay, they come, check your body, they look for your ID. If they can't identify you, they call your parents. So we need an ID, and that is easy to get. I think it's $30, depending on your state or wherever you are. No more than $50 to take an ID. If we can get tattoos, if we can get our nails done, if we can go get our substance things, we can get an ID. It's a huge insult. It's a huge insult, and the fact that it's spread across like a voter restriction against our rights. It's a silly lie that we've been believing for too long.
Yeah, well, what I think is probably, I don't know because I've never been in the position where I needed to take advantage of it. But if you look at, they say, oh well, it's the ones that are in poverty. I would imagine you probably need an ID to even get food stamps or anything like that, right?
You do, and even needing an ID to get food stamps, there's an interview process to receive government's money. They have restrictions. They have like a particular system set up. When you receive food stamps, not only do you come to apply or go online to apply, they call you to do an interview, and you have to do what? Identify yourself. Before they release federal money to you for food stamps for your family, you have to identify yourself. Do you have a home address? If you do, give it to us. What's your social? Ask all the questions to identify yourself, but you need an ID. You need ID, and even of course when you go to the store to buy tobacco, to get alcohol, you have to show an ID. If someone needs an ID to input substance in their body, how much more would you need an ID to go ahead and vote? It isn't difficult to obtain. And again, it's such a silly method that's been used and portrayed as a restriction for Blacks to not vote. It's a lie. It is a simple lie. And I just hope that the people wake up to see that they're being fooled. It's an insult. It's a lie. They're being completely fooled by this whole idea.
I think it's a massive insult. Like how are you going to tell someone they're too dumb to figure out how to get an ID, or they they can't read or all the media stereotype of what Black people are is just it's not reality. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know what percentage of people it is, but it's not the majority, not even close.
No, it's not. One of those governors, I can't recall which one, but it was a female governor, made a comment about Black kids not being able to use a computer. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, is she living in a cave somewhere?
Yeah, we played a video the other day, and they were asking all these Black people on the street. I think it was in like New York or something, right? Which is super liberal city. And they're like, I don't know anybody that doesn't have an ID. And one of them said, well, I think even a little kid can figure out how to use the internet.
They can. And kids today can even take their parents' credit cards to make purchases. So these are 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. It's like you said, it's an insult. It's a massive insult on our intelligence, and our capabilities.
So I was seeing a clip online. I saw a few times this morning when I was looking at things. It was Kamala talking to Al Sharpton. We all know the race baiter Al Sharpton. God, what a despicable human being. First of all, before we even get into my main question, what does the Black community in general think of Al Sharpton?
In general, they see him as a leader, a voice for the people, especially in regards to churches. I don't like to say Black churches or white churches, because if it's the true church of Jesus Christ, it's one church.
Thank you. I agree with you 100%, by the way.
Church. But just for context for this particular conversation, Al Sharpton is a voice to many of the Black churches. He's almost as if they're champion. He comes on the scene when there's a situation where there was a white officer that killed or hurt a Black young man or a Black person. He's always on the scene. He leads those marches. He has always been a leading voice for civil rights. So they uphold him to a great level of respect. Not every Black does, but like you said, in general, they see him as a voice. He's been around in the public eye for a long time, and his message has always been clear and consistent. And I think that's why they follow him so strongly for all these decades. It's I'm for the people. But his agenda contradicts our values and our mission and the fabric of this nation. It contradicts it. Even to the word of God, there's contradiction. But because his message has been so clear, he's always in the hoods. He isn't just on his show. He's in the hoods. He goes there. He goes to the family's houses. He sits with them. So he's a great communicator to that aspect. Undeniably, he's a great communicator.
Okay, so then I got two questions. I think you can answer them together. So now we talked about what general population thinks of Al Sharpton. number one is, what do you personally think of Al Sharpton? Number two is, did you see his recent conversation with Kamala talking about reparations? And she said, yeah, I'll absolutely sign that bill. What do you think about the reparations in that conversation?
Okay, so I'll answer the first question about my opinion, thoughts about Reverend Al Sharpton. I think that this is my honest response, I believe that he was called by God to lead people. And I say that because he's obviously skilled in communicating. He's very bold, very upfront. I think that somewhere in his life, something may have gotten there's some kind of misunderstanding of the ultimate mission that he was called to do for America, specifically for Black Americans. But I do believe that he was called by God to do something great, to be a leader, to be a voice for not just Blacks, but just for really all people. And that's how I come to a conclusion with all ministers to some degree. It's just, I believe that you were called, especially if the fruit is evident, but it's a matter of discerning what is God speaking to you now, and then what he said at the beginning. And if there was any detour, get back to what he said. But a lot of things he pioneers today is a lot of division. I see a lot of division he pioneers. He speaks big on civil rights, but again, there's a lot of division and misunderstandings he has about the ultimate agenda for humanity, especially humanity in America. So again, I think he was called, but along the way, somewhere in his career and his calling, maybe some things happened, and just a misunderstanding has clouded his ultimate mission for what he was called to do in this life. In regards to the conversation with him and Kamala, I believe that any Black person who's running for office, more so for presidency, one of the major things that Blacks want to see, most Blacks want to see, reparations. I don't think that's logical for this day and age, because it's like we're saying, to this generation, this economy today, you have to pay for the sins of what happened 400 years ago to our ancestors. That's going to take from plenty of projects, plenty of agendas that needs to take place this year for our generation. We can't try to make up what happened 400 years ago with the funding for today. We can't try to go back to right that wrong with the current economy, with the current dollars we have on our plate now. We can't go back. But this is going to be the right way to try to right a wrong. We can't do that. We shouldn't do that. But I think that with Kamala, I think at this point, Kamala will say yes to anything. And it's to Reverend L. Sharpton. You're going to give us reparations? Yes, I'll do that. Are you going to kill our children in the womb? Yes, I'll do that. Are you going to give free health care to everybody, having the same governmental options? Yes, I'll do that. I think she'll say yes to anything to get the people's vote. One of that could be because her numbers in the polls are very low. So I think she'll say yes to anything. And I think her being a presidential candidate, to say yes to reparations on spot like that, with just a yes and then a giggle, nothing more thoughtful than that. That's so concerning to me. And I don't see how people can just wave it off. That's concerning. That's a serious deal, because where's the money going to come from to give all the descendants, like I said, descendants of Blacks, reparations? How much? Where's it going to come from? Are you going to track it? Like, what's the end goal? Just give them a check, or let it go through programs?
I don't think any amount of money, frankly. That's first of all, we're trying to solve a problem that's already been solved.
Yeah.
Secondly, I'm not saying that slavery was anything but an abomination, right? Not for a second would I say that. However, no amount of money can ever right that wrong. Right? Because, and the other thing that's crazy, maybe we ought to consider, this is just kind of going off the cuff, which I tend to do, Grace. Maybe we ought to consider taking that amount of money that we might pay towards reparations and pay it to fight actual slavery, because there's actual slavery going on in the United States today.
And actually, with the UN, there are still 94 nations a part of the UN who have not denounced or have no legislation against slavery. There's 40 million slaves still around the world existing. There's an organization called the Wall Builders. They literally go into several countries, literally snatching slaves right under the nose of their slave owners. Some have been shot, killed. There's one man with Wall Builders. Wall Builders is wonderful. It's pioneered by Tim and David and Tim Barton, father and son. The Wall Builders, they literally have men going in snatching slaves. One of their men, he was shot 17 times. He's still alive and he's still operating snatching slaves. Wall Builders, and their organization is established on the book of Nehemiah. Phenomenal work they're doing to combat slavery.
That might be great to get them on the show in the future too, Grace. Maybe you can help us with that. Not just that. Like actually in the United States, there's actual slavery going on with human trafficking and all of this immigration. A lot of that is slavery. You see I don't know how it is in Florida because I've been there many times, but I haven't lived there and I've gone there on work and business and vacation and stuff. But I know in California, on pretty much almost every single street corner, there are people, vendors and selling flowers or selling, La Rosa bars or selling, chocolates or hot dogs or whatever there is. The vast majority of those people are actually human trafficked.
Wow. I'm not surprised. Well,
and law enforcement is very well aware of this too, Grace.
And they're working alongside with those human traffickers?
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far to say that, but I think the problem is just so out of control that they're not, it's like the thing going on in Aurora, Colorado, right? You're well aware of that. And my wife and I were talking about that a lot this weekend. And she said, "Oh, this is what I'm finding online." And I'm like, "Well, sure, the mainstream media is saying that it's not happening, that the police are out in full force, that they haven't taken over apartment complexes, that all these things. Yet there's hundreds of people that are coming online and saying that the exact opposite, right?"
Mm-hmm. I think that this is a good time to engage with the National Guard to gain back control over that area.
That's the only way they can do it.
And it reminds me of what happened in El Salvador with the new president. They had a huge issue with crime, murders, and it was ran by gangs for decades. El Salvador was ran by gangs. The new president came in and had a strong strategy to reduce crime, and he employed the National Guard to do it. One of the arms of the national government to come in and to raid homes, find evidence that people were actually doing crime, committing crimes, a part of different murders, and he imprisoned every single one. If you were part of any crime, 75,000 gang members are in prison right now in El Salvador. And El Salvador is have the most strictest prison of all. Beautiful. It's beautiful. And right now, there's so much peace in El Salvador. There's no fear for the vendors on the streets, no fear of families being invaded, no fear of people just dying randomly, no fear of the gang, no more control. So that city, Aurora, we need National Guard intervention.
Well, you don't have to answer this question, Grace, but I wonder how many of those people from those El Salvador prisons are being shipped to our southern border. But I did a video this weekend, and there's a lot of, he said, she said, and, that's not true and that's true. I don't know. I'm not involved in these communities and I can't tell you, but there's a lot of rumors going around that say, oh, well, Hell's Angels are going there to take care of that problem. Well, logic and media will say, well, no, they're not. That's just a rumor, right? And because it doesn't serve their best interest, but that whole point aside, whether they are or they're not, there is a large percentage, and I would say anything shy north of 1%, frankly, when it comes to this issue, is a large percentage, especially when you consider how many people live in America. But there is a good portion of the population that are rooting for what is in itself a criminal enterprise, a gang, the Hells Angels, to go and do essentially what is still crime, regardless of the fact that one side's doing good crime and one side's doing bad. It's all crime, right? If you're going to go and take people out, it's still crime. So is it going to do good for the people, and are they going to do something that potentially maybe isn't being done by the National Guard and law enforcement? Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But what really kind of struck me about this is Hells Angels going there? Are they not? It's the fact that people are actually rooting for a criminal organization to go and take on another criminal organization in another city because the government seemingly, allegedly, isn't doing anything and isn't doing their job. And we're here, and we're kind of devolving to a state where we're cheering for vigilantism, devolving to a state of anarchy almost. And the question I posed for my social media, and that I think is a very interesting question, I'll let you answer too, Grace, is it potentially even something that the powers that be may want so they can institute a police state? I'm not saying that that's what's going on. For all of the social media algorithms out there, this is all speculation, and my question to Grace is just opinion.
Well, my opinion, this is my opinion and what I hope to come to pass for this occurrence right now. We cannot, and I get it, people are rooting for them to come in, but we cannot overcome evil with more evil. We can only overcome evil with good.
Yeah.
And that's where I stand on that. I understand the excitement and the hoorah behind it, but if there's any motive to come there and to solve that evil takeover they're doing with more evil, that's not going to be good for our nation.
Well, they're trying to make out a literal gang, a literal criminal organization, and we could get into a dispute about this and talk about it all day long. Well, do they do some good things? And are there good people in Hells Angels? Like, look, we're not going to get into that conversation right now. We got just a few minutes left on this show, but. Exactly what Grace said. We're rooting, like we're making out a criminal organization to be G.I. Joe, because we're like, well, we're going to fight evil with evil. No, let's fight evil with good. And we have good men and women in uniform who've been sworn to duty, who should be upholding the law, who should be doing their job. I'm not saying they're not. There's people on the internet that are saying they're not. I don't know what the truth is. I'm not living in Denver, Colorado. I'm not living in Aurora, Colorado. But what I'm saying is very, very likely they're not getting the support they need from their state and federal government.
Right. And that's where that sense of it's justified comes in, because they're not receiving the support they should be receiving from those who have responsibility over them. So I think this is the time for us to really, what we should do as Americans, calls, emails, letters, every state representative in Colorado, put the pressure from the people, every state, on the government of Colorado. That's our angle. That's our angle.
I hear, Grace, that this is allegedly also starting to go on now in Chicago area, which that would be even less surprising, actually, that it would be going on in Chicago, which is essentially at this point just a gang wasteland anyway. And I'm not saying that there's great people in Chicago, they're not throwaway people, but there's a lot of rampant crime in Chicago. Would it be surprising that it's devolved in Chicago to a point where large criminal organizations are taking over entire parts of the city? It's going on in other states.
Mm-hmm. It's happening. It is possible. It's possible. It's a possibility. If there isn't a shift taken, but you know what, Mike, there is a shift happening in Chicago. There's been some great programs of faith happening in Chicago, especially during the time of the DNC. So there's something happening there, but we have to stay vigilant and stay on our guard, because those criminals, they do run rampant in Chicago. And if they were to unite and to become organized like what's happening in Colorado, they easily could, because the atmosphere is conducive for that. But again, there has been some wonderful seed sown of faith and of the word of God and of activity of angels in Chicago that took place during the DNC a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add to the actions we can take that I think you would have thought of given a few more seconds is we also should be praying.
Yeah.
Praying for the people of Aurora, Colorado, praying for the people of Chicago, praying for your own home city and the elected officials. And this is something that we used to say on the show all the time, and I think it needs to be underscored. Even the politicians that we don't agree with, that we don't like, we should be praying for, because if we're not as Christians praying for, there's only one other source that they're getting their influence from, and it's not from God.
Yep. The Bible says that the heart of a king is in the hands of the Lord, moving towards like channels of water. So I remember asking one of my sisters to pray for a leader, and they said, I'm not praying for him. But the leaders we don't like or necessarily agree with, they need our prayers all the more.
Yep.
If we love God and we want to preserve our great nation, we have to pray for them, because it isn't about liking them or not. We need to pray that they have wisdom from the Lord, whether they know him or not, whether they gave their lives to him or not. We need to be pioneer, because there are our covering. There are global representatives. We have to pray for them, especially if we don't agree with them. Then you have prayer.
And I think it's super interesting and important for us to underscore that nobody has been granted authority except for the Lord gave him and granted him that authority. So even Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Pritzker, and all of the others, God knows what's going on. And there's a bigger picture that's going on in the world besides just the microcosm of the national or state or local politics going on in your city.
Mm-hmm. Very true, Mike. Very, very true. Very, very true. And our prayers set the foundation. I had always said, and I've always said, whether the person is president, mayor, governor, principal, county commissioner, any level of government where you're governing over people, not only are you responsible for their outcome, but you are going to be held accountable even eternally. Not many politicians or leaders are thinking eternally minded. They think, let me get policies passed right now. Let me help this and that. They're not thinking about, when I get to heaven or when this life is over, I'm going to be held accountable, whether they believe it or not. They're knowing it now because we're speaking about it now, but you're going to be held accountable to a great degree of judgment, because thousands, sometimes even millions, are under your rulership. Even in the Old Testament, Mike, there were so many kings of Israel where the Lord he was unpleased. And the reason he was unpleased was because he was saying, you made the people sin against me. You turned their hearts towards evil. You, as a president, governor, whoever, if you're turning if you're turning your jurisdiction to the heart of evil, you're going to be held accountable to that. You're going to be held accountable.
Amen. And on that word, Grace, where can people go to find out more about your representative race, your race? Where do they find out more about you as a person, your platform, and the things that you stand for? How can they get more information?
Yes, please check out graceforflorida.com. On X, it's Grace for Florida. My personal account on X is Grace D Glass. Facebook, everywhere, Grace D Glass. And follow me, find out more information.
And I believe we have all of those in the show notes, guys. And if we don't, can we make sure that we get those out there for them, whether it's in the comments or in the show notes, so that people can access this information? Grace, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
My joy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And guys, we'll be coming at you tomorrow with a full breakdown. Jarrett will be back with me. Vivian Ivy, who has recently become a great friend of 511's and a contributor of ours. We're going to be talking about Kamala's interview on CNN and breaking all that down for you guys. So we're looking forward to seeing you all there. Have a great day. God bless.